By the spring of 1943, the invincible aura of the German Wehrmacht had been shattered. The catastrophic annihilation of the Sixth Army at Stalingrad had proven that the Soviet Union could not only take a punch, but they could also hit back with devastating force. Adolf Hitler and his high command desperately needed a victory. They needed to prove to the world, to their allies, and to themselves that Germany still dictated the terms of the war in the East. When they looked at the map of the Eastern Front, one feature stood out above all others. It was a massive bulge, a salient, projecting 160 miles into the German lines around the city of Kursk. To the German strategic planners, including the brilliant Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, it looked like a giant, vulnerable fist. It was begging to be chopped off. The plan, code, named Operation Citadel, was classic Blitzkrieg. Two massive armored pincers would smash through the base of the bulge from the north and the south, trapping over 1 million Soviet soldiers inside. It was a textbook encirclement. It was exactly what the Germans had done in 1941. The German generals believed in their tactical superiority. They believed that the Soviet soldier was little more than a mindless peasant who would panic when faced with concentrated German armor. But as the summer of 1943 approached, the German High Command was about to learn a terrifying lesson. They were about to realize that the enemy they thought they knew no longer existed. The first catastrophic realization didn't happen on the battlefield. It happened in the planning rooms. Operation Citadel was originally scheduled for early May 1943. Manstein knew that speed was critical. He wanted to strike before the Soviets could recover from the winter battles. But Hitler hesitated. Hitler was obsessed with technology. He believed that Germany's new super weapons, the heavy Tiger tank and the brand new Panther medium tank, would guarantee victory, but the factories in Germany were behind schedule. Hitler ordered Citadel delayed. Then he delayed it again and again. The offensive was pushed back to July. General Heinz Guderian, the father of German armored warfare, realized the danger immediately. He argued fiercely with Hitler, stating, "Why do we want to attack in the East at all this year? Kursk is a matter of profound indifference to the world." Guderian knew that every day they waited, the advantage of surprise slipped away. But what Guderian and the German High Command didn't fully realize was that the element of surprise was already dead. The Soviet High Command, the Stavka, knew everything. Through a sophisticated network of spies, including the famous Lucy spy ring in Switzerland, and by deciphering the incredibly obvious geography of the Kursk salient, Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukovy knew exactly where the Germans would attack, how many tanks they had, and exactly what their objectives were. While Hitler delayed the attack to build a few hundred tanks, Zhukov used those 2 months to turn the Kursk salient into the most heavily fortified piece of earth in human history. The German offensive was finally scheduled to begin at 3:30 a.m. on July 5, 1943. The German infantry was huddled in their trenches, waiting for the massive, coordinated German artillery barrage that always preceded a blitzkrieg assault. The tank crews were warming up their Maybach engines. The mood was tense, but confident. Then, at 20:20 a.m., a full hour before the German attack was supposed to begin, the eastern horizon erupted in a blinding sheet of fire. The ground shook violently. The sky tore open as thousands of Soviet heavy artillery guns, Katyusha rocket launchers, and mortars unleashed a biblical hellstorm directly onto the German assembly areas. A Soviet sapper unit had captured a German engineer clearing mines just hours before. The prisoner cracked and revealed the exact time of the attack. Marshal Zhukov immediately ordered a preemptive counter bombardment. For the German generals listening to the thunder from their command posts, the realization was instant and chilling. The fundamental prerequisite of Blitzkrieg was the element of surprise. The enemy was supposed to be asleep, chaotic, and disorganized. Instead, the enemy had just punched them in the mouth before the bell even rang. The Germans realized, with a sinking dread, that they were walking directly into a trap that they had been invited into. When the German panzers finally rolled forward into the rising sun on July 5th, they expected to punch a hole through the Soviet lines and break out into the open country, wreaking havoc in the rear. Instead, they hit a brick wall, and then another, and another. The German generals realized too late that Soviet military doctrine had fundamentally evolved. Zhukov had created a system known as defense in depth. The Soviet lines weren't just one or two trenches, they were a labyrinth extending up to 200 miles deep. The Soviets had laid over 1 million anti-tank mines, up to 4,000 mines per mile of front. When German tanks hit the minefields, they stopped. The moment they stopped, camouflaged Soviet pack fronts, concentrations of anti-tank guns commanded by a single officer firing simultaneously at a single target, opened up from the tree lines. The fighting devolved into a horrific, slow-motion meat grinder. In 1941, German panzer divisions could advance 30 to 40 miles in a single day. At Kursk, General Walter Model's 9th Army in the north fought tooth and nail, bleeding men and machines for 5 solid days, only to advance a pathetic 9 miles. The German generals looked at their maps and realized the terrifying truth: there was no breakout. Every time they cracked a Soviet line, they simply bled into the next one. They were fighting a battle of attrition, and attrition was the one type of war Germany could not afford to fight. Hitler had banked the entire operation on the new Panther tank. It had sloped armor, a lethal 75 mm gun, and was designed to be the ultimate killer of the Soviet T-34. But when the Panthers were finally unleashed at Kursk, the German tank commanders experienced a nightmare. The tanks had been rushed straight from the factories to the front lines without proper testing. They were mechanically disastrous. The fuel systems leaked. The engines overheated. The transmissions snapped under the heavy weight. During the first few days of the battle, more Panther tanks were lost to spontaneous engine fires and mechanical breakdowns than to Soviet anti-tank fire. The heavy Tiger tanks fared slightly better, but they were too few in number, too slow, and constantly bogged down in the massive anti-tank ditches dug by hundreds of thousands of Soviet civilians. The German High Command realized that technology could not overcome mathematics. A handful of invincible tanks meant nothing if they broke down in the mud while facing thousands of rugged, reliable, mass-produced T-34s. By July 12, despite taking horrifying casualties, the Southern Pincer, commanded by Field Marshal Manstein, managed to claw its way through the deepest layers of the Soviet defense. The elite 2 SS Panzer Corps, featuring the Das Reich, Totenkopf, and Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler divisions, finally saw open, rolling terrain near a small railway junction called Prokhorovka. The German commanders breathed a sigh of relief. They believed they had finally broken through. They believed the Soviet reserves were entirely exhausted. They were wrong. As the German panzers crested the hills near Prokhorovka, the ground began to vibrate. Through the dust and smoke, the SS commanders looked through their optics and saw a nightmare materializing in front of them. It was the Soviet 5th Guards tank army, commanded by General Pavel Rotmistrov. It was a massive, strategic reserve force of nearly 800 tanks that the Germans had absolutely no idea was waiting for them. The Stavka had held them back perfectly, hiding an entire army in the forests. Waiting for the precise moment the German armor was exhausted. The resulting clash at Prokhorovka became one of the largest tank battles in human history. It was a chaotic, point-blank brawl of steel, fire, and burning flesh. Soviet T-34s rammed into German Tigers. The sky was black with smoke, and the ground was littered with burning hulls. The Germans fought brilliantly, inflicting massive casualties on the Soviet armor. Tactically, the SS divisions held the field. But strategically, the German generals realized it was a death blow. When Adolf Hitler abruptly canceled Operation Citadel on July 13th, citing the Allied invasion of Sicily, Field Marshal Manstein begged him to let the offensive continue. Manstein argued that the Soviets were on the brink of collapse. But Manstein was deceiving himself. The Soviet Union was not collapsing, it was just getting started. Within days of the German offensive stalling, the Red Army launched massive counter-offensives, Operation Kutuzov and Operation Polkovodets-Rumiantsev, that smashed into the exhausted German lines, driving them back hundreds of miles. The German generals at Kursk realized a terrifying, unshakable truth. They realized that the Soviet Union had produced them in the factories, planned them in the map rooms, and fought them in the mud. Blitzkrieg was officially dead. The German army had thrown its absolute best, its finest veterans, its newest super tanks, its most brilliant commanders, into the Kursk salient, and the Soviet war machine had swallowed them whole. From the smoldering fields of Prokhorovka until the final fall of Berlin, the German army would never again launch a major strategic offensive on the Eastern Front. They realized, too late, that they were no longer hunters, they were prey.